Hi, my name is Kevin. Yeah.
Hi, everyday peeps. Today we're going to be talking about depression and anxiety, but I just want to say hello, everyday people. Tune in. I'm probably, I don't know.
Winners. We are winners on this channel.
Just check out the video. See ya.
Subscribe.
Hey everyday peeps, it's Kim. I'm so excited to have this special guest. Now you must think they're twins, but we're not.
Because I look better.
Negative. Today's topic is going to be about depression and anxiety and how people deal with it. We're going to talk about people that we know, deal with this mental illness, and what are some ways that they've tried to cope with it? What are some ways that they've overcome that? And this is something that, my brother has dealt with. I've, also dealt with depression for a short term. So I'm just letting him, share his testimony, share his platform, and provide any advice or suggestions or tips that he can give you guys. And if you guys have any questions for him, please drop down a comment below and I will make sure that he gets it. So,
well, I don't have any platforms, so subscribe to this channel. Do not look for me on Instagram. Do not look for me on Facebook, YouTube, none of that. My social media is private. But definitely subscribe and comment on this post below.
Oh my gosh. When I meant platform, I meant like your platform, like dealing with depression and anxiety.
Like, I thought you were like the social media, because nowadays everyone's talking about social media platform.
Okay, guys, so we know what platform we're talking about now. So let's just start off with this.
This platform.
Yes. When did you think that you might have either anxiety or depression?
Well, I knew I had it since I was in 6th grade, since about like 11, 12 years old, but I actually went to therapy about like a year and a half ago, and I realized my first experience of like experiencing depression was like when I was 5 years old. Because when you go through therapy, you find out that a lot of things that happen to you in your childhood could sometimes come up in your adulthood because you didn't know how to cope with it correctly. So when you become an adult, like all the layers come on top of it, so you don't ever really develop.
So what are some things though that made, like now as a 22-year-old man, what made you think like, oh dang, when I was 5, that was a form of depression?
Well, I think what we should clarify first of all is there are like two different types of depression. There is a depression that sometimes people feel like if something sad happens or something bad happens in their life, then they have a moment of depression in life. Me personally, I went to a psychiatrist and I went to a psychologist and I was diagnosed through Kaiser Permanente. I have depression and severe anxiety. My anxiety and my depression are linked to one another when I'm feeling really anxious. It can sometimes lead me to depression because I overthink things and overthink situations. And sometimes when I do have my depression, it's kind of hard for me to come out of that hole. But, over time you do pick up skills and you learn how to like find different methods that work for you.
Right. And I'm glad that he made that point. In order for you to really know if you are dealing with depression,
go seek help.
Yeah, go seek help. We're always, getting people to go use therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists.
My depression doesn't come from me being alone. That's actually where my safe place lies, is me being without people, me being isolated, because I'm able to reflect on my life and just see what's going on. That's one of the main reasons why I didn't like her boyfriend to come around, because at the same time my mom had, it's the holidays, it's Christmas, so we had people over, and then every day at the ass crack of dawn at 6 o'clock in the morning, here comes ding dong, and you see her boyfriend coming in, and at that time, that was the first time I ever moved out of my house and was in my dorm. And when I moved back home, I just wanted to be back in the dynamic. I just want to be with my family, but I couldn't do that. I couldn't be in my regular comfort zone because we had people from the holidays coming over. We had her boyfriend. So that coupled with my depression, what I was going through prior to moving back in, and me trying to have a coping mechanism when I moved back into my house, it didn't really work out to how it didn't work out to how life was currently going at that moment. Because before I moved out, she was still dating her boyfriend, but they weren't as serious. He wasn't really coming over as much. But when I moved out, he when he would come over every day, and that was really different for me because how I find my security is through me being alone.
Yeah.
So I know for some people they get depressed because they are alone, because they feel like they have nobody. But me personally, I always found security in being alone, and I never felt that I was truly alone because I always felt like I had God with me, and God is always like guided me, and He's just like, you're not necessarily alone, but you're just different, and you just have to find who fits with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like God makes people partners and whatnot, and makes people that are not necessarily similar to you, but are willing to accept you and like be around you and like develop a relationship with you.
Yeah.
So I was never afraid of being alone, but during that time when you were depressed, I preferred to be alone. Not necessarily because anything you guys were doing in particular, just I didn't know how to deal with. I was very young at the time. I was 19. No, not even.
And
that
was like when you were really like figuring out like what was going on.
Right.
Because for a long time, like I mean, can I bring up the stories like when I caught you?
No, you can't bring up any of my stories. My stories are my business.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Like down here.
Oh yeah. Well, my freshman year of high school, I was a cutter, so like I never really I don't know if she's mentioned this before, but we grew up in a Colombian and Trinidadian household, so a lot of times. Oh,
I haven't, but I mean they know now.
Trinidad right here. Yeah, we're half Colombian, half Trinidadian, and you know a lot of times with the Hispanic and West Indian community, a lot of brown people, we don't really talk about mental health. We don't really talk about what actually goes into it. So at the time when I was, as I said before, I felt depression since I was 5 years old. When I was 6, it was in the 6th grade, around 11, 12 years old. That's when depression actually hit me, and I started to delving into different things into coping with my depression. Not necessarily, and it wasn't necessarily, a lot of people think that when you're depressed, it's because you go through something in life or because something happened to you. Something did happen to me when I was a child, but that didn't really affect me until I became an adult. For me personally, what made me really depressed was just like, I just felt like nobody understood. I was okay with being alone, but I wasn't okay with being misunderstood. So like a lot of times, even now, like me being 22, a lot of times when I talk to people, I have to repeat myself, or like somebody will say like, what are you saying? And so that kind of like irritates me. But I know that growing up, but just because somebody misunderstands you doesn't mean that you don't have a voice. It doesn't mean that what you have to say isn't important. Like me personally, I've always had a voice. I've always been outspoken, but people could never actually interpret what I was saying.
Yeah.
Which is probably an issue on my part because I never knew how to develop good communication skills or coping skills.
Yeah. So like if that's someone, like if you're someone like my brother, you know, comment below, you know, let him know, you know, if that's you, because you know, if you're not knowledgeable in this, you would think it's always in a sad place, or because for me, for example, I mean, I'm a lot better now with being alone.
You have situational depression. I have clinical depression.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is, like, you know how you were saying, like, in order for you to kind of cope with or, you know, progress through with your depression episodes that you get, or cycles, I would say, you actually like being alone and having that alone time. Like, for me, on the other hand, I love being around people. Oh my gosh.
We're talking about coping.
Yes. So, again, like I said, I didn't go to a therapist. I went to someone else though. So just dealing with mental health, my pastor. It's my best friend pastor, but I'm kind of in between church homes. Anyways, he was saying that, you know, if you break your leg, yeah, you can have people pray for you, but you're gonna still take them to the hospital. Now, when you're dealing with a mental health issue, like for myself, you know, I was going through a very sad moment in my life, very stressed. If I were to keep that in, that would be, you know, that could lead to a mental illness. And I think, you know, kind of talking about what we were talking about earlier, how if we don't deal with something over time, it can lead to a mental illness.
I wouldn't say mental illness. I would say mental breakdown.
Well,
because depression is considered a mental illness, and if you bottle up your emotions, it could lead to a mental breakdown.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, you started off with mental health, right? Everyone has mental health. But, you know, the negative sides of mental health is stress, fear, worry, sadness, you know, stuff like that. And what I'm saying is, if you don't deal with those issues later on, you know, if you don't deal with it by either talking to someone that you can, you know, confide in, or, you know, going to seek professional help, then I do feel like it can lead to mental illnesses. So that's why, you know, when someone comes up to you, even if it's something that, you know, culturally you're like, that's weird, you feel which kind of way, just be quiet and listen to them, because you might actually be helping someone. And I'm all for like praying for people. I pray for my brother, I pray for everyone.
I pray for myself.
Yeah, but if my brother, like my brother, I saw him cutting himself, like, and I know that wasn't right.
Well, not necessarily.
Well, okay, I saw his wrist. Okay, I saw his wrist, or this forearm part. But anyways, I wanted to speak up, and I want to help him and send him somewhere. Or that's with anyone. Like, I would always pray for you, but when it comes to mental health, I'm all for using, the professionals that are out there. And I do believe that God has created these people, to fulfill that purpose, to help people, because, we all have a mind and we all need to take care of it.
And some stress, some things of mental health is not necessarily negative. Like stress, I do get stressed, but I use it to my advantage, because it's just how you interpret things. Like, you could feel sad, you could feel stressed, but you could also use it as motivators. Like, I know I feel like what really helps me, because when I wake up, I necessarily feel kind of down, but what really helps me is just, okay, I may be feeling a little down today, but I'm gonna get up. The sun is up. I'm pumping. If the sun is down, it's raining, it's ugly outside, it's cold. I hate getting out of bed at that, like, when it's like that. But I'm like, you know what? I'm alive. I'm here. I'm breathing. Let me go get this money at my job. Let me go to class.
Let me go to the backyard for a quick run. We'll talk about that later.
See, you could run stuff like But yeah, not like I decided to go to a psychiatrist and psychologist, but a lot of people can't afford that. There's actually something that I found out that was actually really helpful. It's called it's telemedicine, and telemedicine is necessary where you don't really go in front of a doctor to receive treatment, but you can do it through the phone or video chat. It's very 2019. It's called Talkspace. You could talk to a licensed therapist, and basically it's just like therapy. You talk to them, and it's through text. You can video chat them 24/7. I think it's cheaper than actually going to sit in front of a therapist. I only went 6 times to a therapist, to a psychiatrist and psychologist. It wasn't for me. I definitely learned skills that I didn't know before, but I'm a very self-aware person and an introspective kind of person. As I said, I like to lock myself in and reflect on myself. Mm-hmm. So when I went to therapy and when I went to go talk to my psychiatrist, some things that they did tell me did help. A lot of things is just like, okay, well, I know this. My issue is, how do I get over it? And then over time, I learned how to get over it. I currently am not in therapy or any psychiatry. I was diagnosed with medication, but I know it's bad to say this, but I don't take my medication because it didn't suit well with me. And that's another reason why I didn't go to my psychiatrist, because she didn't understand. I was like, I'm taking this medication. I know you said I have to give it time, but I don't feel better. I feel worse. I'd much rather just deal with my depression, anxiety sober than with any kind of medication. She just really couldn't understand. And
well, let me pause you really quick. What are some he's so annoying. What are some alternatives, to medicine? Because I know with medication, I would say that I'm for it to a certain extent. I'm not knocking it at all, because I do say it's beneficial. But
yes.
What are some of the alternatives that you have heard other people try that benefited them?
Well, I'm just gonna say this as like a disclaimer for her channel. Just because you are on medication and you're having difficulty with your medication, talk to your psychiatrist if you have any kind of issues, because that's what I did initially. Before I even went off of my medication, I talked to my psychiatrist. She wasn't very helpful, and I think another issue with her is we had a kind of a disconnect, because she was
a white woman.
I don't know if you want me to say all that. She was a white woman, and we're brown, so we're raised differently. We're first generation immigrants. So even though our parents were not born here, we were born here, but we grew up with that back home mentality.
Yeah.
And so she couldn't really understand how that tied into my depression. Even though I would articulate myself and explain it to her, she just still couldn't get it. So that's one of the reasons why I stopped going to.
It would be beneficial to go. I feel like if you find someone in your community, I guess. For us, it's a little different because we're Trinidadian, which is from the Caribbean islands, and then we're also Colombian. So we have a whole nother mesh. But I'm saying, for the black community, for example, I think it would be beneficial to go to a black psychiatrist, psychologist, because I feel like sometimes we do need people that get us.
There are groups and stuff like that, websites that you can actually go find, black psychologists and psychiatrists, and even Latino, Asian, whatever it may be. But a lot of roadblocks that people see is with health insurance, because a lot of times you can have access to these people, but they might be after I stopped going to my white psychiatrist, I was like, Kaiser, where is the first available black female psychiatrist that you have? They said 6 months out. I was like, oh my gosh, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there may be those in the community that can help us, but in order to access them or like to pay through insurance, it may be a little difficult because minorities we're also at a financial disadvantage, and then we don't really believe in mental health as it is. So it may be easy to access it, but to pay for it or to even find time to go see a psychiatrist that's a person of color, it may be a little difficult.
Yeah.
But with coping mechanisms, I was personally on Seroquel. I didn't like it. It made me sleep all day. It made me really groggy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a marijuana smoker since I was I first tried it when I was 15, and since then I smoke. One thing about my school district and where we grew up, every 6 weeks we would have a 1 week break, and during that 1 week break, you already know what's going on. Chief. So as I got older, I stopped cutting my freshman year of high school because I didn't really like how I was feeling, and I didn't really like the people I was hanging around, because even though I used to hang around with other cutters, even though we all used to not cut each other, like slice and dice each other, but
that's not funny. I'm sorry.
No,
it was just like
I made light of the situation.
Yes,
okay. Even though we were all cutters or whatever, they couldn't relate to me. I couldn't relate to them. I'm a minority male in this country. A lot of the kids were white. We just couldn't relate to certain things. So even though we were friends through the depression, when you're depressed or when you're hooked on drugs and stuff like that, you find other people that have the same vices as you, and you guys link together. And sometimes that can pull you down. That's what I'm saying. So a lot of times when you are sad or when you are going through something, you find other people that will fuel your negativity and they'll stick to you, and it's kind of hard for you to leave that depression.
So what are 3? Okay, finish that. Sorry. Oh, I didn't want to lose your thought nor mine, but I wanted to make sure that, after you say this, to give the people, our everyday peeps, 3 tips or suggestions that you can...
about mental health or just like depression?
Anything that you feel like would be beneficial.
3 tips.
Oh, well, you can finish what you're saying.
Oh, as I was saying, is I stopped with that my freshman year, and then I stopped the fall semester of my freshman year. I stopped cutting and doing all that. One thing that really made me depressed is one time I actually tried to kill myself, and I couldn't die, and that was just so sad. I was just
How did you do that?
I was in the bath. I filled the bathtub up with hot water, and I took a razor to shave your legs, and and I was bleeding, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a nap. I took a nap, woke up, water was cold, I was still alive. I was like, well, a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but when you commit suicide, you feel even more depressed when you can't actually complete it. But instead of me feeling depressed, I was like, you know what? I personally, I was like, I'm gonna give it up to God. I was like, I knew because that wasn't the first time I tried to take my own life. So after that attempt, I was just like, I'm gonna give my life up to God, because clearly I'm not meant to die right now. Clearly my life is not my own, it is somebody else's. So that's another thing that helps me, that motivates me to get through my day, because I'm just my life is not my own. Clearly I know that from that experience. So I get up, I do what I gotta do, and a lot of times when I'm working, have a blessed day. People say have a blessed day back. They buy me lunch and whatnot. I get tips at work, and just spreading that kind of positivity, you always receive it back.
Right.
And that's one thing that does help me. Oh. I do smoke from individual.
Yes, you said that.
I do procure, but
do you think it helps?
For me personally, it does help, because I'm the kind of person, I'm very self-motivated. Sometimes it can be a hindrance, and sometimes it can be motivated, because a lot of times when I don't want to do something, when I take quizzes or do any kind of time, I always get anxiety. All my type of anxiety is not necessarily nervous. All my thoughts run together. I have 10,000 thoughts running through my head at all times. So I usually smoke before I do an assignment, and it calms me down. I'm able to focus on one thought at a time instead of having 10 different thoughts running through my head. So I think if you do decide to smoke marijuana as your form of medication, I think you should do it in regulation and in small dosages and small amounts, just so you're able to feel good but not be too high or too stoned where you can't function in day-to-day life. If you're too high and all you do is sleep all day, sometimes when you are depressed you do sleep all day, but if you're trying to do better, I wouldn't recommend that you smoke a ton of weed and just pass out and not do anything. If you could get through everything you have to get done for today, and sometimes, me personally, cleaning my room can be a huge task. Sometimes my room can represent my mental state because it just can be so cluttered and disorganized, but a little organized within the mess. Sometimes smoke a little weed, calm down, reevaluate myself, and then I'm able to clean and get through what I have to do.
Yeah.
So I think if you just smoke like within moderation, and if you know how to be productive, then I think that weed is a safe route for you. But a lot of times people tend to abuse not only marijuana, but they tend to abuse their Xanax, their Seroquel, the hydrocodone, whatever kind of medication is, because they enjoy the feeling of feeling calm and relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as long as you're self-motivated and productive and like you smoke weed, like you should be fine.
Yeah.
You know?
So what are the
tips?
What's tip one?
Tip one for mental health I always recommend people is get sleep. When I went to a psychologist, they said the more sleep you get, the better you feel. Because when you are depressed, you sleep all day. You feel fatigued, you feel exhausted. But when you actually get a genuine 8 hours of sleep, and you do things throughout the day, you work out, you sleep, you get a full 8 hours, you feel great. Tip 2 for mental health. Be considerate towards others. Be very understanding towards others, because the same way how you feel sad or whatever, and you just don't want to talk to people, you don't want to mess with people, and then you go to somebody and they have an attitude or whatever, be considerate towards that person, because you don't know if they're going through the same thing as you. So just make sure you reflect, considerate towards others, and underneath consideration, like you have consideration as the bullet point, the sub bullet point. Just be very reflective on yourself and others. Reflect on like how you come off as people and how you internalize things.
Gotcha.
And third thing, sleep.
Your sleep, consideration, subtopic, reflect.
Interpersonal reflection, and then reflecting in general.
And then 3. Can I add it or?
No, I got this one.
Excuse me.
Find a healthy coping mechanism that works for you. Now, I personally, I work out, I read self-help books, I do things that are positive, I make sure I'm a positive person, and I also smoke weed. There are plenty of people who are totally against everything I just said. They're not for you to go to therapy, smoke marijuana, read self-help books, anything like that. There's some that are like that, but I think people shouldn't listen to that. Find what works out for you. Whatever is helping you get through your day-to-day life and it's not being a hindrance towards you or other people, I think you should definitely do that. Mm-hmm. Because once you find something that helps you be productive or something that helps you motivate you, I think that will definitely help you elevate your mental health. Yeah. And can I just add a number 4? Because one thing, I know we said 3, but let me just add like a 4. One thing that really, 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 really helps me is your environment. Because me personally, even though I may have disagreements, I don't fight. I don't fight people.
No, he doesn't.
Even though I may have different disagreements with people in my circle, I make sure the people I surround myself with are people that I personally like. Do not surround yourself with somebody that's constantly negative, constantly like has an attitude, trying to fight. Like every time you see this person, you're just like, oh my god, like they just exhaust you. I only surround myself with people that I generally feel happy seeing. Like people I'm like, okay, I can't, like my best friend, I can't wait to see him on Thursday. I can't wait to see my sisters. I'm the only boy that's living right now in the house. So being with my sisters actually I actually miss the noise or whatnot. So yeah, surround yourself with people that will lift you up, keep the positivity, and surround yourself with people that you genuinely like. Yeah. If you have people in your crew or your clique or whatever that you do not like, and you're seeing them, it's gonna bring your mentality down. You're like, oh, I don't want to go out. I don't want to see this person. Then you say, oh, I'm an introvert. You're not a real introvert. You just surrounded by shit people. I'm an introvert. Yeah, back to you.
Well, guys, I know this video is a little long, but I do feel like if this is something that you've dealt with, I know we're not going super in depth with anything, but this is just a way for him to spread his story.
And if you want us to, we could do an in-depth video. Just subscribe,
and comment below.
Yeah, and then we could do part 2, and we could expand on mental health, and you guys
suicide maybe.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Whatever the peeps want.
Whatever.
I'm glad that you guys got to meet my brother and hear his story. We want to hear your story in the
Here's
comment.
my yellow
story.
I've been through the
Okay, I gotta say my part.
Oh.
So, again, I'm Kim and this is Kevin, and we look forward to hearing your comments.
This light is really bright.
Bye.
Bye.